are totally not controlled, who are really saying what they actually believe with no weird agenda that they're not telling you about is pretty small.
Yeah.
And I just have noticed that a lot recently, particularly on the question of wokeness and free speech. And if all of a sudden you like become famous, like I'm for free speech, and then you support silencing people who articulate opinions you disagree with, like you're a fraud. You're kind of a sinister fraud.
Yeah.
What's going on, everybody? A bonus episode today. I'm super inspired because I saw Tucker Carlson, a clip on Joe Rogan going around Twitter, where he said you start to notice in the media that there's a lot of people on both sides that pretend that they're for free speech, but they're totally lying and they're pushing foreign policy and they mean nothing they say. I'm glad he sees it. I'm glad he said it on Joe Rogan's podcast. It's a beautiful week. The truth is flowing around, and a lot of people are not sure why certain people disagree with them, this and that. But it does seem like a lot of people are waking up to this, and I'm pumped on one of the biggest podcasts in the world. Tucker Carlson is sharing this thing that's going on that a lot of people don't notice, and he explains it so perfectly that I'm going to show you in 6 clips. I'm excited. Give me a thumbs up in the chat if everything sounds good. Dream Rare Podcast. I don't want to waste your time. This is not going to be a long video. I promise. After a 3-hour stream, it's going to be short. Under 30 minutes, promise. Here it is.
It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. Yeah.
What's going on? Somebody said, is this real? Am I tripping? Did we see Anomaly earlier? Am I eating mushrooms? I don't know what you're doing in your spare time, but I am live again. I'm inspired. I love greatness. I'm not a hater at all. When I hear someone say the truth or something great, I seriously love it. And sometimes I feel uninspired when there's a lack of that and I don't want to be repetitive. But Tucker Carlson, one of the biggest media personalities, Joe Rogan, one of the biggest podcasts in the world, and Tucker Carlson so perfectly explains what I've been talking about with controlled opposition. And I love the way he explains it because he's totally right. And I love that he left Fox News and now he's able to say this stuff, or he's more willing to say this stuff, or whatever it is. Who cares? Here's the first clip. I'm going to play 6 clips, chopped up short because I don't want to get copyright stricken, but I do want to show you this.
Well, the number of people who are totally not controlled, who are really saying what they actually believe with no weird agenda that they're not telling you about is pretty small.
Yeah.
And I just have noticed that a lot recently, particularly on the question of wokeness and free speech.
What he's about to say, he breaks it down so perfectly because it's so hard to explain. Like, what do you mean? You sound like a hater. And it's like, he nails this, explaining how they do it. They feed you things that you agree with, so then you don't notice that they're doing this. It's kind of like a magician trick. Like, yeah. And then they'll sell out the Constitution and nobody realizes. I love how he says it. Let's go.
There are a lot of people who are like on your side because they're for free speech, who are not actually for free speech at all, who are pushing a very specific foreign policy agenda, for example, and using another issue to lower your defenses and let themselves into your brain.
He's explaining it so perfectly. He's like, there's people that are going to say they're for free speech, but they're really not. They're pushing a specific foreign policy, and they're just using issues that you agree with to get into your brain. So then when it really matters, America's on the line, our Constitution's on the line, they can give it away and you don't even notice because they're giving you these little cookie crumbs of things that you agree with. I love how he worded that. It was brilliantly done. That's why, listen, say what you want about Tucker. I'm not asking you to fully trust him or believe everything he says, but there's a reason that he's one of the best in the game. There's a reason why, he was the best person on television. Number 2 wasn't even close. Like, this guy knows when he's in the zone, he's in the zone. And I love listening to Tucker or some of his guests. Like, he's one of the few people that, even though he's so big and mainstream, I've always liked a lot of his segments. Not all of them, but he's the best in the biz. I think there's a reason he is who he is. I mean, also maybe his family, and I know he said his dad used to do certain things in government or whatever, but it is what it is. I mean, he's telling the truth. I appreciate it.
And I think that's really sinister, really, really, really sinister. And it's becoming more obvious now. Like, if you're for free speech, then you're just for free speech because you support the principle. The content of the speech is not that interesting to you. The fact that a sovereign human being has a right to express himself because he's not a slave, he's a citizen and a human being, like, that's what matters.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's watch. We got a couple more clips.
Yeah.
And if all of a sudden you like become famous, like I'm for free speech, and then you support silencing people who articulate opinions you disagree with, like you're a fraud. Mm-hmm. You're kind of a sinister fraud.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because that's the business I'm in, I've really noticed that. Have you noticed this?
Yes. And that's also the same kind of thing when you hear them talk.
He talks about Barry Weiss in a second. I'm going to play it, but I'm just going to go out. Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, these are two people that come to mind where they got famous off of saying that they're free speech absolutists and they believe in the First Amendment and they have a right to talk about foreign policy and what they're saying is not hate speech, even though it's edgy. And all of those same things, you got Dave Rubin cheering on the closure of protests in France. He would be fine if America turned into these European countries that don't have these type of freedoms. And he'll say that he won't, but I saw him cheering. He got ratioed on his own Instagram because it said that France banned Palestine protests. And he's like, yeah. And you're like, isn't your whole existence and fame from this thing that everyone had your back when you believe, like that's what the left did to you? Of course, if the protest becomes more than a protest and becomes violent, that's already illegal. That's illegal in America. They're not banning violent protests. Those are already banned. They're banning peaceful protests, which is the entire thing that he came off of. And with Ben, he not only says nothing about the anti-Semitism hate speech laws they're passing into America, he tweets them as if he agrees with them, as if he's declaring them. Interesting stuff. Let's listen to Tucker. 2 more clips.
And it became really clear to me watching that completely changed my view of Barry Weiss forever. I was like, oh, she's a fraud, actually. This person's not honest at all. Like she has a very specific agenda. That's all she cares about. The rest of this stuff is just a kind of sleight of hand maneuver. If your agenda is neocon politics, which is her agenda, just say so. Don't pretend to be a defender of free speech as a principle, which is what she does.
How is she a defender of neocon politics?
Barry Weiss?
Yeah, like what specifically?
So you could watch the full clip, or honestly, just go to Joe Rogan's podcast, listen to the whole podcast. I'm going to be doing it eventually because I want to hear more than just the clip I saw. But, in the clip, I didn't want to share too much because I don't want to copyright strike. He was saying that Barry Weiss is someone that comes to mind. She's left-wing, but she's gotten famous off of Joe Rogan's podcast and the intellectual dark web group where they kind of pitch her as this free speech left-winger. She's left-wing, but she's very principled. She's very honest. And the thing is, Tucker Carlson is saying, I don't study Barry Weiss that much, that she's pro free speech until it came to, Tulsi Gabbard, and she's calling her a toady and basically trying to badmouth her, etc., and run her out. And Barry didn't even know what she was talking about. So he used her as an example. I'm not going to speak on it because I don't know her so well, but personally, I've never believed Barry Weiss. I can see right through her. So it's not ever something I understand. Joe Rogan's friends with her, so he's trying to defend her. Tucker's saying, I don't trust her at all. And then Tucker says that she supports neocon policies, which I've come to learn that, yes, neoconservative is an agenda that's been going 20, 30 years. I think another word for that is Zionist, the Zionist agenda. There's people on both sides that are neocons or Zionists, and that's what they care about most. First Amendment, America, like they'll say that, yeah, they're for it. But the second that there's a fork in the road and you either go with the First Amendment or you go with Zionism and neoconservatism, a lot of people, you notice they go towards the neoconservatism and the Zionism over the First Amendment or American principles. And this is where Tucker and them have a fork in the road. Tucker believes in the First Amendment and free speech, and he's willing to debate. And a lot of people, not so much. But it's not just the left or right wing thing. It just seems to be what a lot of people do. And I think that Tucker has noticed that with Barry Weiss. I've never, like I said, I could see right through her from the beginning, so I don't know that much about her. I know she like pitches herself as like the ethical mainstream media liberal that totally sees what they're doing is wrong. But apparently Tucker has some sort of analysis that she doesn't mean what she says, which I don't doubt. I just don't know enough about it to really weigh in on what she did besides make fun of Tulsi Gabbard. And I guess what Tucker was saying is she was smearing Tulsi Gabbard because Tulsi Gabbard disagreed with her on Syria. And that's what people do, is they wait till you say something honest that they can't debunk. And then they start calling you names that they don't even know what the names mean because they're just trying to wipe what you're saying under the rug. I understand some people will say, free speech is not necessarily agreeing with people. You could make fun of someone and call them a toady. That doesn't mean you disagree with free speech. I would agree with that, but there's speech laws being passed in America. Who talks about them? I did another show. You could watch it if you want to watch my longer one. This is going to be under 30 minutes, but I talked about Patrick Bet-David and Jason Whitlock recently, And Patrick just made a video on his Twitter because although he read the book, How to Gain Friends and Win Influence, he doesn't seem to be able to win friends and gain influence this week because the entire internet's ratioing him and all his social media channels are being overtaken by over 70% of the people disagree with what he's saying because he's wrong, but he's stubborn and he doesn't want to admit it. But anyway, it's like that's what people see now, whether it's Barry Weiss, Ben Shapiro, Patrick Bet-David. They see that there's anti-Semitism, hate speech laws being passed against the Constitution. Hundreds of millions of people see the hypocrisy of the Ben Shapiros of the world, that they've made a living off of protesting. But when it comes to Palestine, he just wants to scream blood libel, anti-Semitism. And not only can you not protest, but Ben doesn't even want you to say that the country that he totally doesn't support ever did anything wrong, or else you're committing some offense of blood libel, which is also being passed through American legislation. Everybody knows that now. So people like Patrick and Ben and Barry, they can't get away with these little sneaky attempts at being like, oh, you just hate this country. Oh, you just hate me. Oh, Tulsi Gabbard's a toady. She's a toady for Russia. What does a toady mean? And it's like, I'm not really sure. If you don't know what the word means, then why are you calling someone a word that you don't know what it means? And it's like, that's what you start to realize about certain people, that they are 100% caring about their foreign policy and everything else plays second fiddle. And what Tucker said in that clip, I agree with. He said, I don't know if I played that clip, but in the longer one, he says it. I think I did. He says, if that's what you are, just don't lie. Like if you're all about this country or whatever, or this foreign policy, that's totally fine. But like, if you're going to tell people for 5-6 years that free speech is your main principle, but it's just only your principle if it's convenient to your views, and the second that it's not, you're ready to support hate speech laws for a country, one race, and one religion, but then you call everybody hateful for talking about it, then you were never a free speech principalist, because free speech is not for the speech you agree with, it's for the speech you disagree with. And especially with speech legislation, you can't believe in speech legislation in America. You don't have to agree with opinions. You could block somebody on Twitter, but at the same time, you can't support legislation that infringes on the First Amendment. That's way too far. All of these people are mysteriously silent about it. You know, Patrick said he wasn't sure how much foreign aid Israel took, and and he's getting ratioed. And it's like, you said they took about 10 billion. They've taken 300 billion. You've never once talked about the anti-Semitism hate speech laws. You don't seem interested in inviting somebody on the podcast who talks about it. So people aren't going to like that. They don't want Chris Cuomo. I don't know what the book says, How to Gain Friends and Win Influence, but hiring Chris Cuomo isn't going to make people like you. He's not even well liked. I don't understand how that's going to make more people like you or whatever. But, people are seeing through that now. Tucker Carlson's seeing through it. Joe Rogan talks about it. Obviously, Joe likes Barry, so he's not going to say too much. But that's the concept that we're dealing with. And I'm not going to waste too much of your time. I just like how Tucker explained it, because he basically said, I'm not a Jesuit, by the way, but you could say that. I don't care. You have the speech to say that. I'm not a Jesuit. But anyway, with that being said, when it comes to how they do it, they basically say trans. It's like trans sports sucks and trans things are doing too much. Absolutely. So they get you with that. They keep talking about it. And you're like, yeah, no, I agree with that. A man is a man, a woman's a woman, and they should play their own sports and use their own bathrooms. And, they hit you with this like, oh, Donald Trump's awesome. You like Trump. I like Trump, right? We're Trumping out together. And then you give them your loyalty and you're like, oh, this person speaks the truth. This person really believes what I believe. This person is on my side. And then you take your eyes off the prize, where no matter how much you like somebody like Donald Trump or a politician or a media host, just pay attention to everything they're saying. Because if I like Ben Shapiro because he believes in free speech, but then he's hawking the vaccine because his wife's a doctor and he sells sheets and gold and he knows better because he knows money, anything like this, I don't have to sit there and be like, yeah, I agree with everything he says. It's like, wait, I'm seeing right through his reporting during the COVID vaccine. It sucked. It's not like he made a mistake. It was just bad. It was wrong. It was inaccurate. It was crappy. Like, I don't have to agree with it just because I agree with one thing. And it's okay to disagree or say something about it, because that's how you get results. But a lot of these people, they've just figured out, like, it's almost like a chameleon. It's like, what do people want to hear? What do liberals want to hear? Say that. What do Republicans want to hear? Say that. And then there's people on both sides of liberals and Republicans who they're pushing their foreign policy, their speech laws, their subversion of America through those political movements. And the second that you point it out and you're like, wait, aren't you for the First Amendment? But what you're saying is now completely hypocritical. They'll just say you're being hateful and it's hate speech. I noticed that with With Trump, it's like if I report the truth about the Democrats and Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton, it's like amazing journalism. Thank you for showing me the truth. When I do it with Donald Trump, a lot of people who like Trump call it hate speech. They're like, you're being so hateful. It's so hateful to say he took $1 million from Pfizer. It's so hateful to say he printed the money. And it's like, it's not hateful. It's literally real. It's just these other podcasters won't tell you it because they know if they tell you what you want to hear, then you're going to not pay attention. And it's almost like Tucker, I want to play that clip again because he's like, they get inside your brain with topics that matter to you. But then once you figure out that like nothing they say is even real, it's just like a chameleon. It's not even real.
There are a lot of people who are like on your side because they're for free speech, who are not actually for free speech at all, who are pushing, a very specific foreign policy agenda, for example, and using another issue to lower your defenses and let themselves into your brain.
I think that's a cool way of putting it. Like they tell you what you want to hear to lower your defenses and put themselves inside your brain. And then, I watched this this method, like, for example, Dave Rubin, he posted that he was happy that France was banning Palestine protests. 90% of his comments were saying, what? Your whole career, your entire defining moment was the opposite. And now that's what you're saying? Everyone figured out that he was totally lying. But then it's like, what happens in 2 days once people see through it? They just go back to what made them famous, which is like, look at the trans, look what the left's doing. And that's lowering your defenses to get inside your brain. The one guy, James Lindsay, he blocked me and everybody on Twitter. I don't specifically care. I just wanted to have a little debate, but apparently he didn't want to. He has the right to block me. It's fine. I do that when people annoy me as well. But I'm following him on Instagram, and his entire Instagram, he's just getting ratioed by all his followers all the time. Like 90% of the people are like, you're a phony, Christ is king, like you're a loser, you're dumb. And it's like, he doesn't know what to say because nobody likes him anymore. So then he just posts like, look at the left, look at the left, look at the left. And then they post that until people are back on their side. Oh yeah, the left sucks. Like, yeah, the left sucks. But what Tucker's talking about is probably the most pressing issue of our time. Yes, the left sucks. Yes, the phony rhino sucks. And the Republicans, and it's obvious Mitch McConnell sucks. And Mike Johnson sucks. Everybody knows that. But what if Donald Trump was passing speech laws? What if Ben Shapiro wouldn't talk about it? What if the Daily Wire would Candace Owens you if you didn't talk about it? What if all these new people that popped up out of nowhere and got these huge podcasts, they don't want to talk about it and they blacklist everybody who talks about it? You understand? It's like, what if that was happening? It is happening, and Tucker Carlson's talking about it. Say what you want about Tucker. You don't have to trust him or like him. I understand everybody has their own threshold of what they like. And Tucker's done some things that people don't like or they don't believe and they don't want to believe him and they think he's a phony or a plant or whatever. He's definitely well connected. He's Tucker Carlson. But, I judge a man by his fruits and I judge a man by his, like his actions. I don't hold anything against people like their past, or as long as they're being real. And I think they're being authentic now and they're providing value and they're on the right side of these topics. I'll give people, yeah, you did some stuff that I disagree with and I thought was weird, but for him to go on the biggest podcast in the world, he doesn't have to do this. He could just easily say the left sucks. He could just say, yeah, Mike Johnson sucks. Everybody knows that. He doesn't have to go on and explain that people are pretending to be pro free speech, but they're against it. He doesn't have to do that. He did it because he knows it. Candace Owens knows it. I know it. Jason Whitlock probably knows it. I'm sure Mark Dice knows it. I'm trying to think. There's a lot of people who've been blacklisted and censored even harder than I have. They know it. So there's a group of people who absolutely know it. And it's hard to not talk about because once you know it, you have two routes. Either you talk about it because it's the most interesting and obvious talking point that makes sense, because if our side's not really our side, we're not going anywhere. Or you ignore it and just kind of like coast and talk about something else. But there's two things going on. One, a lot of people are starting to feel empty by doing that because they know it's not the right thing to do. But two, this is the beautiful part about social media. This is why I'm so happy, because I honestly, like, everyone's not going to be popular, but it seems like for the first time in 5 years, people that don't get this concept that I've been talking about, that Tucker's talking about, that Candace is talking about, that many have talked about for 5, 6, 7 years, even more, is you can't keep lying about this topic. Everybody knows it now. Like, you can't sit on Piers Morgan and say that Israel gets $10 billion worth of aid, I think, not as much as Ukraine. And it's totally different than Ukraine because they're our great ally who loves us. It's like, They're getting more money than Ukraine in U.S. history. They're getting hundreds of billions of dollars, not 10, hundreds of billions of dollars. So like, that's not going to fly anymore. Like, people know that. So that's my thing, is like, you can get the money, you can get the power. Everyone's not going to agree with you on everything, but I'm seeing Ben Shapiro gets ratioed every day. Matt Walsh gets ratioed. Michael Knowles gets ratioed. Patrick Bet-David seems upset tonight because he, for the first time in 2 years, he's been extraordinarily popular. Patrick's great. When Patrick's in the zone, he seems super honest. He's on point. He's cool. Like, everybody likes Patrick Bet-David until they don't, until he just becomes another Chris Cuomo, until he becomes another Sean Hannity, until he becomes a Mike Johnson. And I know he's not that bad, but it's like, he doesn't understand why he's getting ratioed. So I'm just trying to explain it to people. This is a line that billions of people in the world are drawing. You can't just keep downplaying what's going on, because there's people in our movement that say they believe in free speech, have made a living doing that. And then when it comes to a certain country and a certain topic and a certain foreign policy, they completely flip. If you could support Israel and tell the truth about how much foreign aid they're getting, sure. But if you have to lie about how much foreign aid they're getting in order to support them, people are going to ratio you. If you could support Israel, but not support, or at least you will talk about anti-Semitism, hate speech laws being passed through America to turn us into Canada or Europe, people might respect you and agree with you. But it seems like 99.999% of Zionists and neocons and people who support that agenda, they don't care about the speech laws. That policy is above America to them. And that's what bothers Americans. I can't speak for everybody or every country or every religion or every race or what this guy said in a troll comment, but overwhelmingly, I'm noticing a pattern that it's becoming increasingly unpopular and hard for news hosts to lie about the topic I'm lying about it. If you're a Zionist, why can't you speak about the hate speech laws? If you don't care about the hate speech laws, Patrick is making these things. People are not liking it. He's getting upset because he's unpopular for the first time in a long time. Make a video about the anti-Semitism hate speech laws and how Trump and DeSantis are passing legislation to infringe on the First Amendment. If you don't, and you just backtrack and spiral to make excuses for the country that gets more money than Ukraine, and you're not really sure why, but whatever, people aren't going to like it. It's not popular anymore. The tides have turned. Everybody knows now it's not popular. It's not popular for Ben Shapiro or Matt Walsh or Michael Knowles. Luckily for them, they've had a long run and they've made a lot of money, and they're probably financially stable. So if they want to talk about it or not, it doesn't matter. They'll still probably make money. But as far as the bulk of this community, the patriot community, whatever you want to call it, the people that actually are ethical, whether they're left wing or right wing, they're truth seekers. You can't just plant yourself in a truth seeker community and become the same thing that everyone didn't like. Everyone knows now, including people like Tucker Carlson. Because I'll tell you what, this is my read on Tucker Carlson. You could have your own read, but my read on Tucker Carlson is this. He comes from a connected family. He's been connected to the media. He's done his fair share of mistakes, and he's admitted them more than I've ever seen anyone else. He's admitted he pushed wars. He admitted he was wrong. I personally believe that Tucker Carlson, for a long time in the media, was under the impression that he was doing the right thing for the country, for the military, for his boys. And I think at a certain point, it's so obvious now. In 2000, it wasn't obvious. I could kind of see through it. There's things that I didn't see through, but I saw through the wars. I saw through George Bush, but a lot of people didn't. They needed to wait 20 years until 20 years of Afghanistan. They figured it out. I believe now the anti-Americanness, the anti-race thing, the anti-religion thing, the hypocrisy, the speech laws, the communists, the dual party corruption. It's so obvious now that there's a fork in the road. Either you play along or you don't. And I believe that Tucker has a good heart and a good soul. And I think that Tucker loves America. And at a certain point, if you love America, you can't push a foreign policy that's destroying America. You can't support media companies, media hosts, and politicians who are passing hate speech laws. So at least how could you not want to talk about this? Like, if you're a conservative patriot news host and you realize your own party's passing speech laws and your own allies in the media are complete hypocrites and they're using free speech as a phrase while they're subverting free speech and trying to blacklist anybody who stops their foreign policy, you have to talk about it. So I feel like I could feel it when Tucker talks. he's like, this is what's interesting to me. I love that he told that to Joe Rogan, one of the biggest people in the world, one of the biggest podcasters in the world. It's not a coincidence that Tucker said it, because you could just listen to how he said it. So eloquent, explained it perfectly. It's this weird reality when you're in this world and you're around all these people and you turn around and you realize that he said a large majority, I'm not going to quote how much he thinks, but I would say 90% of people actually don't mean what they say. And I'm not talking about like, oh, they make mistakes, they're flawed, whatever. I'm talking about like total 180, like their entire persona of what they want to do to America. It only exists to pass their foreign policy against American values. And the second you realize that they're using a foreign policy that literally works against the First Amendment of the Constitution, American taxpayer dollars, they start to blacklist you and try to use any justification they can to shut you down. Shut down your protest, shut down your boycott, shut down your divestment, shut down your channel. And a lot of these little sneaky snakes, they run behind the scenes and say, don't talk to him. Don't talk to him. You don't have him on your podcast. No, don't have him. I've never said that to anybody ever. If a friend of mine who knows me in real life calls me and says, hey, what do you think of this person? I'm going to talk to this person. I'll let them know what I think. But as far as in the media world saying you shouldn't talk to that person, I don't care who talks to who. Everyone can talk to everyone. Have anyone you want on your podcast. I've never once told a single person that they shouldn't talk to that person. That's like clown, sneaky snake behavior, but that's what's going on. Tucker sees it. And, as soon as Tucker starts speaking the truth, as soon as Candace starts speaking the truth, we see how everybody acts. Tucker has been falsely accused thousands of times, not just by left-wingers. He's been doing that for 5 years. By right-wingers. I follow a little bit of everyone, the DeSantis bros, the Trumpers, these people, the people I like, some left-wingers that are cool, some people that I don't really like that much, but I want to see what they say. And there's a huge split in the party. When Tucker does something awesome and accurate and good for America, and he's doing something that no one wants him to do, which is like interview a Christian in Gaza. Nobody wants him to do that. You could see a split. Half the party says, man, that's awesome. Half the party says they get upset. Why? I'm not saying they have to agree with them, but their foreign policy is the number one thing that matters the most to them. And like Tucker said, this is what I agree with. If that is the case, then that's the case. Just say, my foreign policy is the number one most important thing. Everything comes second. American Constitution comes second. Our taxpayer money, our economy, it all comes second because I believe in defending this country. That's my number one. I would respect that person. That's what I'm saying. Just tell the truth. Tell the truth to the American people how much foreign aid they're getting. Don't lie about it. Don't undercut it to make your point. Tell the truth and then make your case for it. But if you can't do that, and you're constantly just being like, I'm a conservative. There's people today that it's just like Alan Dershowitz. I mean, that's a great example. He's been a Democrat his whole life. He's going to flip to Republican soon, maybe, if they don't support Israel. So what's his number one talking point? There's thousands of Republicans that if Donald Trump ever said, you know what, I'm going to cut military aid to Israel and I'm going to, support America and funnel that money to veterans who are sick. There's thousands of Republicans, including some of your favorite people in media, they would then register to the Democratic Party. The second that Trump cut foreign aid to Israel, all of a sudden, if Joe Biden came around and said, I'll pay Israel $100 billion, they'd flip to a Democrat, the same way Dershowitz wants to flip to a Republican over that topic. I'm just being honest. I don't care that people feel that way. It makes sense. Just be honest about it. Tell people that that's your number one policy. If you do that, then there's no deception. It's like, that's what I care about. Not free speech, not the First Amendment, not foreign aid, not the cities. I care about this. Okay, fair. Just say it. That's all we're asking. Tell people the truth. Don't masquerade yourself as something you're not, and then, or do it, because if you do it, everybody knows anyway, because it's like you can only lie about that for so long. It just becomes obvious at this point. I'm trying to keep this under 30 minutes. I promise. I'm not trying to break a promise, although it's tough. I love to talk. Appreciate you guys. I might be back. I was inspired by this clip. Watch the full one if you want to see more. Thank you, Tucker Carlson, for saying the truth about what's really going on the left and the right. I appreciate it greatly. God bless you. Hey, what's going on, my friends? Just a few ways to stay in touch and support if you'd like to. The first way is dreamrare.com. We have blue beanies, black beanies, pink hats, other colored hats, freedom versus tyranny shirts, stay blessed long sleeve, God is great long sleeve, and lots of more cool items coming soon. Dreamrare.com. Check out the shop to support. Everything's made